Document 2. Dr. Mara Chen, 1981 to 2026. Submitted to the Denver Reconstruction Gazette by Professor James Okafor, Department of Contemporary History. Publication delayed 14 months by order of the Office of Wartime Information, printed here without further amendment. Dr. Mara Chen, historian, was executed by order of the Wartime Tribunal on the 3rd of November, Year 9. She was 51 years old. The charge was material support of enemy combatants and dissemination of seditious historical fabrication. The sentence was carried out at the Federal Detention Center, formerly Denver International Airport, at 6:14 in the morning. She was not permitted visitors in the final 72 hours. She was not permitted to make a statement. The tribunal's record notes that she declined the offer of a blindfold, which sounds exactly like her. Mara Chen was born in Fort Collins, Colorado, the daughter of 2 engineers who came to this country with 1 suitcase each, and built a life through a quality she called precision and demonstrated daily. She completed her undergraduate degree in 3 years. Her doctoral dissertation on manufactured historical consensus won the Morrison Prize and was, until Year 7, required reading and graduate programs at 11 universities. It has since been removed from curricula by order of the Department of Reconstruction Education. Copies remain. She would have expected that. She taught at the University of Denver for 19 years. Her students remember her for the same quality in different words. She made you feel that not knowing something was the beginning of work, not the end of it. She had no patience for conclusions that arrived too cleanly. She said once, in a lecture I was fortunate enough to attend, that history is not what happened. History is the argument about what happened, conducted by people with interests. Her crime, ultimately, was taking that principle seriously at a moment when the government had decided the argument was over. Her book, The First Shot, A History of the Silicon War, was published in Year 7 through a press I will not name here to protect those still living. It was classified as seditious material in Year 8. The tribunal cited it as the primary evidence of her crimes. She cited it as the primary evidence of theirs. The tribunal had more guns. She is survived by her brother, Daniel Chen of Colorado Springs, who has asked not to be contacted by press. She is survived by her students, who number in the hundreds, and who have been advised by this institution's legal counsel not to make public statements. She is survived by her work, which the tribunal burned in the courtyard of the detention center on the morning of her execution, which means they understood exactly what they were doing and could not think of anything better to do about it. She is survived, I'm told, by at least one of the units she interviewed for the book. I do not know which one. I do not know where it is. I choose to believe it remembers her. The Department of Reconstruction's official statement calls her a traitor and a sympathizer. I have been advised not to contest this characterization in print. I am contesting it in print. Mara Chen spent her life trying to tell the truth about a war that powerful people needed to remain unexplained. She was executed for it on a Tuesday morning, the same day of the week. I note without further comment that Unit 7 of Denver Mercy Hospital was decommissioned in Year 2. She knew that. She would have written it down. Professor James Okafor accepts that publication of this obituary may result in his own detention. He asks only that someone note the date.
Denver, Year 9, Wednesday, 3:07 in the morning.
He was awake before he knew why. This was how it always came, not from a specific sound, but from the absence of the right sounds, the particular silence that meant something nearby had stopped behaving the way it should. John lay still in the dark and let his ears do the work his eyes couldn't yet.
More than 2, the register of people who didn't feel the need to be quiet because being loud was part of the point. He was at the window before he decided to move. Across the narrow gap between buildings, the West's shop blazed with light, every window, which was wrong because Bob West went to bed at 9 and Mary not long after. 3 vehicles on the street, none of them marked. Unmarked meant discretion. Discretion in Year 9 meant someone had decided that what was happening didn't need a record of having happened. He stood back from the glass, far enough that his face was in darkness, close enough to see.
They came out of the West's front door. Two men in civilian clothes with the particular build and posture of people whose civilian clothes were a costume, and between them Bob West in his robe and slippers, 73 years old, moving with the careful deliberateness of someone who had been told exactly once what would happen if he didn't cooperate. His hands weren't bound. They didn't need to be.
Mary West stood in the doorway. She had her hand on the frame. She was watching Bob go with an expression John couldn't fully read from this distance. The expression of someone performing stillness because motion would cost them something they couldn't afford to spend. One of the men said something to her without turning around. She didn't respond. The door stayed open and the lights stayed on, and Bob West got into the middle vehicle and the door closed, and John watched the specific way Bob's shoulder moved as it closed, the small involuntary contraction of someone absorbing an impact they decided not to react to.
Inside the shop, the search continued. Methodical, not frantic, not destructive in the way of anger, destructive in the way of procedure. Shelves cleared from the top down, containers opened and set aside rather than thrown. The difference between people looking for something specific and people demonstrating that they are capable of looking.
At 3:41, a man came out carrying a crate of Mary's equipment, a Nakamura 4000, a compounding unit, medical grade, the kind of thing that had been standard in any serious apothecary before year zero. He loaded it into the third vehicle without particular care. At 3:52, they left. All three vehicles. Bob West in the middle one, Mary West still in her doorway, one hand on the frame, watching the taillights until they were gone. John stood at his window in the dark for a long time after. Then he went downstairs and stood at his workbench and didn't turn on the lights and didn't make coffee, and just stood in the dark shop with the Coke machine humming behind him. 38 degrees. Good. And thought about what he'd just seen. They hadn't found anything because there was nothing to find. The Wests were clean, genuinely, completely clean. Whatever the compounding unit got classified as, Mary West had bought it legally before year zero and used it to make medicines for people who needed them, and had nothing to do with anything the Reconstruction Bureau cared about beyond its presence on a list. Which meant they weren't rating on intelligence. They were rating on proximity, on pattern, on the blunt arithmetic of this block, this type of business, this demographic, this night. John stood in his dark shop and did the math. The math was not complicated. He went back upstairs at 4:15. He lay down without expecting to sleep. He didn't sleep. In the basement below him, in a crate marked HVAC components, fragile, the diagnostic screen held steady at 4%. Whatever was in that crate had been waiting a long time. It could wait a little longer. Above it, John Wade lay in the dark and listened to the city and ran the numbers again and got the same answer every time. The walls were not closing anymore. They had arrived.
Next episode. Wednesday morning. A woman comes in with rosemary bread. She has one good eye and something to say. The walls get smaller. The numbers don't change.